On today's episode of Uinta Garage, we're going to be installing this Banks ram air intake on my 2016 Duramax diesel. I'm Joe, and this is Uinta Garage. Right, now the first part of getting this project started is opening this beautiful Banks box to see what all is included in the kit. Oh, now before I get started on that, first do us a personal favor and like and subscribe to our channel. It really means a lot. I'll wait. All right, thanks for doing that. Here we go. Open the box up. We've got the Banks elbow with places for the two sensors. The Banks hardware, some blue Loctite, and the gasket kit. The new intake box with the oiled filter. I chose to go with oiled for my application. And the clear door that lets you see the filter, and obviously some sweet Banks stickers. So with all this unboxed, let's get started. These are all the tools you're going to need for this job. It's really very simple. 10mm socket, tool to pull the plastic tabs, flathead screwdriver, a small flathead, a Phillips, a T20 Torx driver, a 10mm socket with extensions, and a flashlight. Before we get started with this project, I am going to disconnect the negative battery terminals for both batteries. I do this because I am disconnecting sensors and I don't want to risk any kind of shock or anything shorting anywhere. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the batteries like Banks suggests. All right, for the first step, you got to remove this rubber water channel. You do that by pulling forward and lifting up. Comes right out. For step 2, we need to go ahead and remove this crossbar. What we do is you take your 10mm wrench, go ahead and loosen this bolt here. And then you can see right here in your cowl, there's actually like a little notch. Take the open side of a box wrench, go in here, and you loosen it a half turn. And this actually allows you to swing this support up and out of the way so you have easy access to your airbox. For the next step, we're going to remove the wires going to the sensors. You do this first by removing these plastic clips, pulling them out, and then pushing down and gently wiggling the sensor loose. All right, there we go. For the next step, we need to remove the factory elbow. You do this by removing, or loosening, excuse me, these two hose clamps here. There's one more right here. And you give this a nice little tug, wiggle. There we go, and she's out. Now it's time to remove the air box. You do that by pulling up on the outlet side until you hear it pop, and then moving it an inch to the driver's side. It takes a little maneuvering to get out, but it's really not that bad. You do have to pull up a little bit harder, I think, than you might expect. This next step is optional. There's a plastic flat back here that you can remove these two grommets on, and it allows cooler air to come from behind the headlights here. They say to only do this if you're in dry climate. If you're in a wet weather climate, banks can't guarantee that you won't damage your vehicle if water gets sucked up through there. Where I live, it's pretty dang dry. I hardly ever drive this thing in the rain, definitely not through puddles and stuff, so I feel pretty comfortable going ahead and doing this mod, so I'll go ahead and do that now. Now it's time to remove the two sensors from the old intake box. You do this with a T20 bit. Now be very careful pulling these sensors out. You don't want to damage them. So just go ahead and pull them straight out without wiggling or bending or prying, because we don't want to damage them. One. There we go. Now that we've got the sensors out, what we need to do is install our old sensors into the new elbow. First thing you need to do is install this supplied gasket right here on this sensor. You can see it just clicks down right over the top of the factory seal. Go ahead and leave that seal there. Now we'll pull our intake over here. And we will stick this in. And you use the longer screws that were provided by Banks to go ahead and screw this down. Make sure that that makes a nice good seal. Now don't over tighten this, you don't need to break the sensor in half. Just want it to be nice and secure. See, that one's in. We will go ahead and slide this guy in here. Doesn't want to go that way, so flip it around. There we go. You can see the holes line up. It only goes one way. Go ahead and stick that in there. And we are on to the next step. Now it's time to install the foam seal. I'm going to get started down here on the bottom. Just clean the surface real good. If you get the oiled filter like I did, it will be a little bit greasy, so this won't stick very well unless you clean it. I use some alcohol to clean it because I don't want to damage the plastic with any other chemical or like brake cleaner or anything. Okay. Now in the instructions it does make mention of this if you're a little bit long. can go ahead and trim it where it needs to be trimmed. For me, that's right about here. Right there. Go ahead and press everything on really good and tight. Again, make sure that this has got a really good seal. I don't want that coming off later. To remove these two bolts right there from the factory airbox holders. So let's go ahead and pull those out. Do not lose these. You're going to reuse them with the Banks intake. Put these just out of the way. Now we need to drop the new Banks airbox down in there. And you need to line up the holes with those factory brackets. I'm gonna need to get a flashlight so I can actually see down there to line that up. All right, you can see down there. That's where these two bolts are. We're a little bit of a bugger to get in, but we got them. Now I need to install the Banks elbow into the back of the air filter. Once that's in there, you need to go ahead and tighten down the hose clamp. Now we install the factory hose for elbow. Nice and tight. And then we connect Banks elbow into the factory tube. All right, we've got the tube installed now. One thing to note is this part's a little bit of a bugger. You've got to really manipulate it and get it just right so that there's a good seal in the back of this filter. I don't want to be sucking in hot engine air the entire time. So you kind of have to maneuver that just a little bit. We're going to go ahead and finish connecting our electrical connections. We're going to push those clips back down in. And this one's over here now. Put that down. Push that little red tab in. Now we need to install this window and connect the battery cables back up, and I think we are ready to rip. Something worth noting, the instructions remind you that if you don't put some blue Loctite on these screws here, they have a higher probability of actually backing out. So make sure that you use the supplied blue Loctite as you tighten down that cover. Okay, just like when we were removing this before, we're going to go ahead and swing that support brace back on over here and install the screw. And we'll tighten both ends of this bracket down and then go ahead and hook up the batteries, and then we'll fire it up and see what it sounds like. All right, the installation is now complete. Turned out pretty good. Overall, it was not that complicated. I think the hardest part was kind of maneuvering that filter around to ensure that these sensors don't make contact with any other pipes inside the engine bay. one person, 35, maybe 45 minutes total start to finish with some very basic tools. I look forward to seeing what this does as far as performance and helping with regens. I will report back in a later episode. Again, thanks for watching Uinta Garage. Please like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.